The virtual CISO moment is brought to you by vCISO Services, a leading provider of quality and experienced virtual chief information security officers for small and mid-sized businesses. Check them out at vcisoservices.com. Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the virtual CISO moment. We've got Joe Dixon with us. He's with Halcyon. Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Had a good weekend. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. So I'd like to hear a little bit about your past. I know that you've got a very interesting path and relatively new to cybersecurity. Of course, everybody's relatively new to me because I've been doing this for decades. But
Absolutely.
if you could just start from the beginning and let us know where you started and where you're at today.
Okay. Yeah, of course. So in high school, when I was graduating high school, I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I wanted to play pro soccer, but it didn't end up panning out the way that I wanted it to. So I ended up joining the Marine Corps, and tested well. I actually studied for a test that there's no resources to study for. I found somebody who did. So I was able to score better than probably I deserved. And then I qualified to take a test to see if I was going to become a crypto linguist. And it basically just tests your language acquisition capabilities, and tested well in that. Found another book I could study, and was placed in an Arabic position where they sent me out to California, taught me Arabic, and I worked for about 2 and some change years at an NSA site in Georgia called Fort Gordon,
Hmm.
where I was doing language analysis for the NSA site. And that's kind of the first time that I bumped elbows with anybody in the cybersecurity field. I didn't really know much about it, but they were in shops adjacent to us, and they were. It baffled me because they were all making up more jobs for them to do, and then they were getting paid for those jobs that they were making up. And I couldn't really understand it at the time, but as I've started to get into the industry, I've noticed people there's so many problems that haven't been solved or aren't recognized yet. It really attracted me watching them do that and being excited about what they were doing. So that was I did the language analysis for 2.5 years, did that with the Marine Corps stuff as well. Kind of found my passion, something that you and I had talked about, which was martial arts.
Hmm.
um, I don't know, do you know who Conor McGregor is?
Oh gosh, yeah, of course. I
Okay.
can't. I'm not even going to try to imitate his accent, though. I know some people can do it really well. I can't.
I can't either, so we'll just leave that where it is. I'm attracted. I love. Most people are attracted to greatness. I think that's why you have icons like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods. Conor McGregor was that for me, and I was like, I
Mhm.
really want to try this MMA stuff. So I took my first fight. It was a Muay Thai fight, which is kickboxing with knees and elbows. Fell in love with it and decided, hey, I'm not going to work at the NSA anymore. There's no windows in those buildings, and they time you for however long you're gone for the bathroom. I was like, this isn't for me. So I got out, took a couple MMA fights, and I ended up getting acquainted with a gentleman who has a sales company, but he also has a friend who runs a MSSP.
Hmm.
And I helped him with MMA, and he's like, "Oh, you're a pretty good dude. Are you looking for a job?" And I was like, "Kind of, not really. I'm trying to pursue MMA, but amateur MMA does not pay anything. So yeah,
Well,
I'd
that's what
love
I
to."
call it, amateur, I guess. So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah, yeah. And even professionals don't make that much. It's whether you
mhm,
can get businesses to sponsor you. But he
right.
he got me there, and I started working in sales and also operations for this small MSSP. I was really attracted to the cybersecurity side. The CEO of the company, Eddie, had an extensive cybersecurity background, but he had his MSP built out for IT first, and he was adding on cybersec. So I got to sit in on the process of him evaluating tools and evaluating solutions to add to really provide value, and I was very attracted to that.
Hmm.
Um, my we ended up wanting something. Me and my colleague Max, we became friends over there, and we ended up wanting something that was a little bit more remote. Gas is astronomically high right now, so we were spending 150 $200 a week in gas.
Yeah.
And he found Halcyon, which is a new cybersecurity company in the ransomware space. He hired on, and then he passed a good word. and they weren't going to hire. I don't think they were going to hire any more BDRs at the time. Maybe I was the last one.
Hmm.
But I talked with the guys. I loved their energy and their attitude, and they reciprocated that appreciation for me, and that's how I ended up here.
So tell me a little bit about Halcyon. Usually at this point in time, I will ask the stock question of like, well, what do you think is the most significant threat to small, mid-sized businesses? But given what Halcyon does with regards to ransomware, I think I already know the answer to that question. So
Yeah,
I've seen a little bit on the website. I haven't had a chance yet with our schedules. I know we've tried to kind of hook up to do a little demo of it. I would have liked to have done the demo before this to have a little bit more knowledge, but I did check some on the
yeah.
website. But then again, a lot of people watching this probably haven't had the demo too. So can you give us a little bit of information on what Halcyon does and what kind of differentiates it in the ransomware mitigation industry?
Of course. And yeah, to answer your or address your statement earlier, I'm obviously biased. Like I think ransomware, I'm not necessarily in an echo chamber, but pretty close with
Hmm.
ransomware being a top priority. So we're an endpoint resilience agent, and we're taking a different approach to addressing ransomware. That's all we do is we focus on ransomware and how to coexist with your next gen AV and your EDRs to really focus on ransomware and add that value where your CrowdStrikes or your Microsofts, they have an umbrella of things that they cover,
Hmm.
um, and they're very good with malware. We coexist with them and pick up the slack where ransomware may be missed and is still being missed today, as we see in the news all the time. Um, High level things, we obviously have a pre-execution, we have some deception and anti-detonation capabilities, as well as like next gen behavior. But our really bread and butter, John Miller and Ryan Smith, who are our founders, spent the last 6 years working alongside the government creating offensive cyber weapons, and they got very good at that. And then when what we call the watershed moment for ransomware, or at least in our opinion, was the Colonial Pipeline breach.
Hmm.
Whenever they were looking at the catastrophic impact and they started reading into it, they were like, "We think we can make a difference here." And we have all these things, but we started with them, especially being in that space. They said, "Hey, we're going to assume everybody can get past any barrier that we put in their place. Enough time and money, anybody can solve it." So what we're going to do, we're confident in our first part, but we're going to start with isolation and resiliency to, at the end of the day, everything else fails, we still protect business, we still protect livelihoods. And we're doing that through firewalling off endpoints, protecting the VSS. But kind of the thing that makes us interesting and excites people is I don't want to say we, because I don't know how it works, but they are using man in the middle attack methods to
Hmm.
capture the symmetric encryption keys and give those back to our clients. So essentially, they're not having to worry about paying a ransom because they'd be paying for those keys. Now we have them for them. We build a decryptor, or we have an existing decryptor, give them that back, and now they have their data again.
Oh, okay.
Um,
So to kind of distill it down, if someone did click on a ransomware link and their computer starts to encrypt, you don't even have to rely upon paying the ransom to get the key back because you've already captured it, is what you're saying.
exactly,
That's a good
exactly.
approach. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it makes people it makes them raise their eyebrows, and maybe for somebody talking with me, they're like, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I say something like that. There's two things. They're either I want to see this, or they're like, this sounds like BS. I want to show you why it's wrong, or how it's not gonna work. And then the one other thing that we have in that final step that we built out is it started off as something called deletion delay, where we essentially just delayed the deletion of things in case we saw anomalous behavior, 10,000 files being deleted. But what it's turned into as our capabilities have grown in this is a rewind function or a self-healing function. And at that point, once we've stopped the ransomware and once we've eliminated it and updated our machine learning, I don't know how it works. Maybe you would more. We do meetings every week for them to explain to dummies like me how this is working. But they're using
I've kind of lost my technical edge. I remember joking that they took away my red button privilege about 15 years ago, so I can't like restart a firewall or anything. And it's probably the best thing that they took that away from me. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm on the front end of that, so maybe one day I'll get their red button privileges. But
well, good
right
luck
now I'm
with
out
it.
here. Thank you, thank you. And essentially what they're doing is they're rewinding through process and memory, just rewinding everything that was done up until the moment that ransomware was introduced. So it's not a
Mhm.
backup. or it's not a rollback. It is actually rewinding everything and undoing it just like that.
I bet you
And
that the and this isn't ransomware related, but just as far as backup and rewinding, I bet you that I don't know if you heard about the Rogers incident over the weekend or last Friday, where a big provider in Canada, they made a network configuration change, and it just messed things up, and they couldn't rewind from it. So it's like the
oh
whole
no,
concept about backing out or getting back to where you were beforehand. That's a fundamental of change management. So and of course, ransomware is an unexpected change, so it wouldn't go through change management. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
absolutely. No, that's fine. That was kind of me wrapping up on that capability. But I would love to eventually get to a point where I know how they're doing those things.
Hmm.
But even some of the people that have been in this industry for 20 years, they're Ryan especially. They're speaking on a different level, and I kind of equated that to my linguist roots. We have a test called the DLPT,
Hmm.
and it's from 1 to 5, and it establishes your proficiency. I was a very good student. I was one of the top of my class, and I had a 3 in Arabic. Um, the gap from 1 to 3 is nothing compared to the gap from 3 to 5. I'm not even a 5 in English because there's technicalities and things that you have to be familiar and capable of talking about that will bring you up to that level. John and Ryan are 5s in cybersecurity, and I'm a 1 or a point 0.5. And
Well,
so,
you kind of bring up where I was going to go back to and talk a little bit more about your service experience, and thank you for your service. Appreciate that.
thank you. Thank you.
What about being both in general in the Marine Corps, and specifically what you were doing, that you think might have given you an advantage or will help you in cybersecurity? And the reason why I asked this is that there's a lot of folks that are transition from military into cyber, and sometimes they have a little bit of a difficulty like making that transition. And I think part of it is being able to explain, this is what I did in the military, and this is why it's important to cyber. What are your thoughts on
Mhm.
that?
I think that's a great point. I've actually talked with a couple of my Marine Corps colleagues that have been looking for jobs since then, and they're having a very hard time with what their resume looks like and
Hmm.
that equating to civilian equivalents. And I think, to be honest, I think some of it is so hyper specific to warfighting or warfighting efforts that for the people that I've talked to, I'm like, hey, you need to take a step back and maybe not go through the details of this, but be like, this is what I was capable of understanding and learning, and the impact I was capable of making once I was able to understand what it is I was supposed to do. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to do is, as far as what your question about the military, I think my biggest attribute from that is discipline, maturity, and working in a meritocracy where I could see hard work equating to more responsibility, but also either rank or privilege based off of that. And I think those kind of intangibles
Hmm.
are what set the difference. And I think people need to do a better job of utilizing what the military gives as far as extra training, free extra training, to kind of ease that transition into the civilian sector.
Yeah, and I think also too, I always talk about giving the what, but you need to give the so what. But had a conversation last week about this with regards to security metrics, where what are the best security metrics in cybersecurity? Well, you could talk about like number of EDR blocks, firewall hits, so on and so forth. But you present those to like the board of directors, it's like, I don't care. What does this mean to the business? And what I tell folks in the transitioning from the military is, think less about the detail and more about how did that impact the mission, to
Hmm.
make sure that whatever it was you were doing was successful. It's certainly within information security too, one of the things that I've found is that, and I'm a big evangelist for, is physical fitness. And I think that you have to be able to take care of yourself to be the most effective you can. And obviously the MMA fighting and the title boxing, I can't relate with MMA. I can relate with title.
Yeah.
I did do a little bit of that a couple of years ago, like right before COVID. And it was tough, and I got done, and the guy at the desk, I was doing the freebie, and he's like, "What'd you think?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I wish I could worked up a sweat." And he's like, "Are you kidding?" And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, "Of course I am. I'm having a heart attack here, you know." But anyway, I digress, which I usually do. Physical fitness, as far as not only infosec, but just in general, from a career um, success and a career, um, I don't want to say enhancement, but I guess just positioning you for success. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one, I want to say for the title boxing, even me when I was training to fight, when I took a title boxing class, and if you push yourself, there's the throwing the amount of punches and kicks that you throw within a 45-minute time block will exhaust anybody. So
Okay,
it's
okay. Well, I feel good
yeah,
about that
yeah.
because I mean, here I was about ready to like barf up a lung, but it's like
Oh yeah, we would have athletes from Michigan State come in and they were just not ready for it's just a different type of working
it
out. Like
is.
they're used to running and lifting.
And,
Yeah.
and I consider myself really great on cardio. I have a high VO max. I've run half marathons, full marathons, and it wiped me. And one of these days I'll go back, but I just can't like do it all. But
Yeah.
so
But
so
as far as physical fitness, I think just the lessons that I've learned from the military physical fitness, soccer that I played in the past, MMA and even title boxing. I think that the biggest thing for me, one, I think in the cybersecurity community, when you're sitting behind a computer all day, it's very easy to be like, hey, this is my job. This is where I invest my time.
Mhm.
Um, but with fitness, if you don't invest in your body, eventually your mind will start to either play tricks on you, or there's from my experience, like if I'm not working out or if I'm not investing in my own physical fitness, I experience some sort of depression, whether it's a little bit or a lot. And I don't know how the chemicals work in the brain, but I do know that there's a certain amount of dopamine that's released when
Mhm.
you go on a run or when you lift or when you accomplish something, and that it's not necessarily integral and directly to a job in cybersecurity, in my opinion, but I think that that allows you to have accomplished something that only you were responsible for. You're like, I'm going to get this done because I'm going to be disciplined and I'm going to
Mhm.
invest in myself because I understand long term that's important. That sets you up, especially if you do it in the morning. It sets you up for the rest of the day. Just like the Navy SEAL that wrote the book, "Make Your Bed Every Day" or whatever. I don't know what the name of the book is.
But I know what you're talking about. Go ahead and say it though.
Yeah, I can't remember his exact quote, but he said, if you make your bed every day, you've accomplished one thing and you've set yourself on the right path to
Yep.
be able to accomplish the next thing. And it builds on each other. So small victories. And I think that with physical fitness, take out the part about you being healthy, you living longer. If you have the small victory in the morning or you have that small victory during the day, you have this. I have specifically the self belief to go accomplish the next thing and the next thing. And things aren't as intimidating when you break them down into steps.
I mean, I think people sometimes think, well, that sounds so silly, but it is so true. And you literally start out the day with a success and
Mhm.
keep on moving forward, and then you just build on that. And well, physical fitness and doing all these activities certainly is one element for relieving stress, as you are probably finding right now, and you're going to find as you go further in cybersecurity. It's a very stressful field. Is that the only thing you do to help relieve your stress? Have you not gotten to that point in stress yet, or do you do something else to help relieve stress?
Um, to be honest, you kind of inspired me to start a podcast. So I just started doing that, and
I've never
I'm
heard anybody say that before. What's the name of your podcast?
we actually don't have a name yet. We did our first episode, and we're like, hey, if we make up a name right now, it may not feel right as we start to find out what this podcast is. The first episode is called Cat Boy because my son, it's his favorite character in a cartoon that he watches, and we were just talking about being parents, and we were talking about everything. There's no real topic quite yet, but it's incredibly stress relieving to just get on there with somebody that you know and trust, and then you can just talk about things in long form conversation, which I feel like is lost in today, where
Mhm.
everything's broken up into snippets, and you have your news bites and your sound bites, and everybody's just paying for clicks. And it's very nice to just be able to have conversations with people. So even in my job, just being able to have a 30-minute conversation instead of a LinkedIn message back and forth or an email, it's for me as an extrovert, it's very relieves a lot of stress for me.
Well, this gives me the chance to add another little plug for Anchor. Hey, have you tried Anchor yet? It's like, it's the best place to do podcasting. Anchor really, I don't know if you've checked it out, but it really is decent. And I've been doing it for now about 9 months on Anchor. I started this whole thing on YouTube. I absolutely love it. And I actually, this will be the first time I'll say this too, because I haven't really promoted it, but I started actually a second podcast, and it is actually has nothing to do with cybersecurity. It is the weekly Bible wrap up, and it is talking about weekly Bible readings, what my summary is of that, and my thought of it. And not promoting it yet, but just doing it because I think you build it, it'll come. Kind of like I got a little tap on the shoulder to do it. So good luck with your podcast, and let me know what the title is once you figure it out. The virtual CISO moment is taken. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
And the Joe Rogan experience is taken too, from what I understand. So
yeah. I don't think we'd get a whole lot of views if we're side by side with those names. But yeah, I can see why you love it. It's incredible. We already have a couple people lined up to talk with, and it's just, I'm obsessed with people. I'm obsessed with people living different lives, having different experiences. That's one of the things the military gave me, is an understanding that every single person has something different about their lives. Even if they grew up in the exact same place with you, they may have different parents, they may have different experiences, school, anything. And I mean, I'm 26 now. And when I hit 25, I realized if I live to be 100, I'm a quarter of the way done. And that's a big moment for me, because I was like, this is fast. Everything goes fast, and there's so much I don't know, and there's so many people and experiences I haven't had the opportunity to see yet. So
yeah, well, thanks for making me feel old. I just clicked over 55, so I appreciate that.
There you go.
So outside of the podcast, what plans do you have for advancing? I know you talk more about learning more in cyber and going down that path. Where do you see yourself going in cybersecurity?
Well, I saw a map of all the different possibilities, and it just overwhelms me. But to be honest, I think that with some like right now, I'm a cybersecurity evangelist for Halcyon. And I like that because I get the opportunity to meet people, hear what they're doing, tell them what we're doing. Eventually, I think I would like to have some facet of that, maybe in a more influential role, where I'm talking with people about how we can help. I'm hearing how they can help, and collaborating on ideas. I read a little bit about what goes into being a CISO, what goes into being, the engineer route. And I think one of the things that's been consistent throughout my life is I love somewhere where there is a meritocracy, somewhere where I know that there's not a cap, that I can't work harder to exceed whatever that is. And that ended up being why I got out of the Marine Corps, because I got promoted and they said, hey, you got about at least 2 years till you can make more money. And for me, if I can find a job that complements my ability and desire to talk with people, while also positively influencing the future of the cybersecurity industry, I love that. I love that it's the Wild West. I love that cybersecurity is not done being, people are still making up positions for themselves, and it's providing value. I think it's incredible.
Well, I'd have to say, I guess my advice there, if I'm qualified to actually give advice, is to stay flexible. I never thought about being a CISO before. I never thought about going off and doing it on my own as an entrepreneur, but things happen sometimes. And certainly when those opportunities came up, I was happy to make the leap. So, well, Joe, It has been absolutely a pleasure talking with you today. Appreciate you joining us. And best of luck with the podcast and everything else.
Thank you. And you too.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Stay secure.